And we're back, folks. Still pretty jet lagged. But anyway, let's get this started. There's one thing I need to make clear to everyone. There's one little confession I need to make, and that's this. You didn't quite see all of my trip. After Antwerp, that was the last video I did that I put on here. I actually met up with my dad in Bruges, and we spent some time there. Went down to Lille, just over the French border. I believe it's the most northern city there, alongside like Dunkirk and Calais, kind of like where they had the D-Day invasion and all that stuff, Omaha Beach and whatnot. So went to Lille, which is also a stop on Eurostar, but I digress. Spent some time there, and then went down to Paris, to Paris. So that would have been the second time I visited that capital city. And when I'm with family, whether it's my dad, whether it's whomever, I don't film it. So that's why you didn't quite see the like all of the vacation, just because I only film the parts where I'm solo, or I'm with like a friend or two, right? Because that's just how I do it. Anyway, so now that we're back home, it's I think a good time as any to reflect on these past nearly 3 weeks. Hasn't quite been 3 weeks. I guess round it up, but I'd say things largely went smoothly. So my flight to Amsterdam, it actually went quick. I think because I dozed, even sitting in economy where you don't have the best bedding accommodations, but it actually went well. Getting to Amsterdam. Now, one thing I learned is, and I think this was also the case for last year's trip, and that's getting out of the train station is half the battle. And I say this because you look on a map as to like where you're staying versus where the train station is and be like, oh, if I walk in this direction, it'll be fine. Oh, no, 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 no. Because when you're at ground level and actually there, whole different ball game. You will not know where the hell you need to exit, right? So there's like maybe two exits, maybe there's one exit. Every train station is different. Anyway, as soon as I got that all squared away, and it wasn't just Amsterdam, I had that problem at their central station. I think Brussels was another one, definitely was. Because it was a red-eye flight, because flights from the US to Europe, or Canada for that matter, to Europe are red-eyes, so meaning they leave in the evening and they arrive in the morning, their time. So typically, I would probably get there, or I got there at about 10, 11 a.m. And I was too early for check-in at my hostel, and the person told me, "Oh, you gotta wait 2 hours, or you gotta wait." I think she said 2 o'clock. So thankfully, the person was able to put my luggage in a storage closet. So I'm like, well, let's tackle it. And I think I don't know what video it ended up on, if it was the first or the second one I did in Amsterdam, because there was me getting there, and then there was me when I was actually there. I don't know which one it was, but yeah, that was a bit of an issue I had, but it was obviously fine. That's nearly a non-issue. Um, and as for prices, now this is something I definitely failed to answer. I dropped the ball on last year's trip because I'm like, oh, how much is everything here? Well, I did get a bit of a ballpark as to how much I was paying for meals. So for meals, I was paying roughly 20 to 25 euros, which in dollars we're probably talking like in the 30s, maybe high 20s, um, which isn't too bad, but I didn't see that as like too steep. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, yeah, that's fine. A lot of steakhouses actually in Amsterdam. There's quite a bit of Argentine steakhouses, which came as a surprise to me. What wasn't a surprise was all the Indonesian food, all the Surinamese food, because Indonesia, Suriname, those are two Dutch colonies, former Dutch colonies, that because typically, yeah, you have people from those areas kind of migrate towards where their colonial epicenter was, right? This goes for many European countries. Now, as far as the weather goes, it was quite warm the first week I was there, which kind of sucks. I was hoping for maybe colder weather, but I was able to go out in like a t-shirt such as this one and jeans. Um, I probably could have gotten away with shorts, but no one really was wearing shorts, so it was fine. But yeah, I was sweating because I was wearing like long sleeve shirts. And obviously I took full advantage of showers for sure, because I definitely needed them every day. And also, one thing I don't like about Dutch train stations is you gotta scan your ticket to even get to the platforms. I don't like that. It was kind of the same thing in France too, but not to the extent as the Netherlands. I didn't like that, and I remember I had trouble at first. I'm like, why isn't it letting me go through the barrier? I'm pointing my QR code on the thing, and I talked to the person. Oh, put it in flight mode your phone, and increase the brightness. So I did that, everything, and it all worked. But I just did not like that system at all. Eventually, the weather did get colder. It was still warm when I got to Belgium, but it gradually got cooler. Oh, by the way, it was like 70s, like in Fahrenheit. So like, yeah, we're talking low 70s, and then it got down to 60s, and then eventually kind of upper 50s. And you can translate that into Celsius, but for my American audience, that's what it was, temperature-wise. And in case you're wondering, no, I didn't screw any hookers or smoke any weed. I didn't do any of that in Amsterdam, right? Because that's what people think when they think Amsterdam. They think red light district, free legal marijuana. I didn't do that. So it was a clean, wholesome Thanksgiving. It was a clean, wholesome vacation. And I think I had maybe one beer when I was over there, but that was it, you know, because I'm not really a drinker. I've said this on the channel before, not really big in alcohol. I think it's overrated, but, you know, I certainly wouldn't turn one down. Hard liquor is where I draw the line. I do not, I repeat, do not mess with that stuff. Another thing about Amsterdam, I was able to point out all the Americans with probably some maybe not so accurate answers. Maybe it's like, oh, that person's not an American or whatever. But no, I was able to like tell, just because here's the thing. I've watched enough Walter's World to know that like there's quite a bit of science. So first of all, baseball caps. Yes, I understand they're gaining popularity all throughout the world, but it's mainly just Americans who wear those. I used to be a hat person maybe like 10 years ago in my late teens, early 20s a little bit. I did kind of screw around with like snapbacks and like the maybe Velcro ones, right? I did that a couple of, and I'm like, this ain't me. But so there's that, and then also university shirts. That's another dead giveaway. And if they wear their sunglasses on their hat, yeah, definitely. And it didn't really happen where people spoke Dutch to me. It actually didn't happen at all. Not Amsterdam, Haarlem, Utrecht, Hague, like nothing like that. But it did happen actually quite a bit in Belgium and France, where people spoke French to me. So I'm like, yes, I'm not American. They don't see me as one. This is obviously when I wasn't filming. But yeah, Belgium too. Ooh, I gotta tell you, those chocolates, next level. Same with the waffles. I think I said that in the video also. And I took Eurostar from Amsterdam down to Brussels. It was actually train where Paris Gare du Nord was the final station. I went there, but just not at that point in time. And I actually, my dumbass got in the wrong seat. I thought I was getting in the right car, in the right one, but I was one car off, and I'm like, oh, I feel so stupid. So, you know, I had to cross like cars and shit, and you know, it all worked out though. But yeah, we lost the Eurostar virginity. I was thinking about doing a video on that, maybe like kind of putting that into one of these vlogs, but I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. So it is what it is. Plus like Eurostar reviews on YouTube have been done a million times before. So I'm like, you don't need me doing one of those. You've seen it all before. Then again, you've seen people vlogging in these cities as well. But you know, that is what I want to do. I want to contribute to that. But the Eurostar thing and train reviews, you know, save that. I'm going to save that for other channels. Same thing with flights. You know, I've taken a fair amount of them, but I'm no Noel Phillips, Josh Cahill, Simply Aviation. What's another one? Nonstop Dan. I'm none of those guys. Another thing about Amsterdam, there's a lot of cyclists, right? There's a lot of it's probably the most like bicycle friendly city in the world. If Not Just Bikes has taught me anything, like I said in the vlog, like word per word. But yeah, it's not always possible to stay out of them, because they say stop, stay out of the bike lanes. You can't always do that because of how narrow the sidewalks are, and oftentimes there's like delivery vehicles like occupying like most of the sidewalk, if not all of it. So you have to kind of veer your way around, and you can't do that without walking in the bicycle lane. You know, what are you gonna do? Go on the other side? There's a building right there. You know what I mean? And it's like a very narrow. You know, it could be like this. It could be like the vehicle can be this close to a building, right? So you can't always do that. And obviously, I knew coming in, like, yeah, definitely, you know, look both ways for cyclists. Not as many in Belgium, but obviously Amsterdam, like, was the craziest when it came to, yeah, the cyclists. Paris too, kind of as well. And I remember this from the first time I was there because I was there twice now. I know I'm jumping around here, but you know, I'm not putting these in any particular consecutive order. It's just kind of like throwing it out there as to you know what's noteworthy about the places I've visited. And so when I got off the train in Brussels, when I first arrived there, you know, went to the train station, Brussels Zuid slash Midi, because they do the French and the Dutch name side by side usually. I'm walking out of the station and I'm like, you know, on the way to the hotel, I'm like the only white dude there. Dude, everyone else was like black or Arab. I was like, this is so weird, man. I wasn't used to that. Um, there have been times where it's kind of been like that around like maybe places where I live, right? Because there are like there are kind of segregated areas of Chicago, of course. A lot of cities have that. You know, if you're watching from the UK, Canada, Australia, South Africa, like especially South Africa, given the apartheid past you've had, you definitely know what I'm talking about. Like, there are times when it's like, you know, if you're a white person, you'd be like, oh, wow, this is weird. You know, it's kind of a weird feeling. It's not scary or anything, right? Like, you know, I'm not saying people with dark skin are scary. I do not want to imply that because that is not what I'm saying. It's just, I don't know. It's just like, it just felt kind of strange, you know, being in that setting. But it was fine. You know, people largely mind their own business around here in these countries. Not like here, because here, you know, there's certainly a lot more harassment that could happen. And speaking of harassment, there was, for each of these countries did have their fair share of crazies of like people just. I saw there was one guy on one of the Dutch trains, and he was like sharing his life story or whatever. I saw something similar when I was in Berlin when I visited there. On the I think it was no, it wasn't the U-Bahn, it was another train. But yeah, these people are everywhere. When I was in Lille, there was like a guy like screaming at random people. I don't know, he must have been drunk or something like that. I don't think I saw anything like that in Paris. No, not that I recall. A lot of shit in Paris. There's a lot of like shit on the sidewalks, which I saw like right outside the Airbnb my dad and I stayed at. Yeah, there was like a lot of shit actually on the sidewalk. There was a big turd like right next to the building that we were staying at, and also, and there was a protest that was just insane. It was right outside our Airbnb as well because it was right across from a high school, and yeah, they were like barricading the doors with like all these dumpsters, and the police came in. There were some skirmishes. It was insane. It was horrendous. But eventually, within like a couple of hours, things got back to normal and like, you know, people dispersed, I guess. No need for tear gas or anything like that, but it got pretty insane. And the reason for that was because Macron, the president of France, he did this thing where he elected a far right person to being the prime minister. So obviously that's not going to sit well with people. And now, as for Lille, which is a city I've never been to in France, because I was barely outside Paris the first time, but it's a cool place. You don't need to spend a lot of time there. You can honestly like see quite a bit, even being there for like a day, maybe two tops. Because my dad and I, we saw like you know, these cool cathedrals they have there. There was also like the office of where Charles de Gaulle actually. It was either the house he grew up in or the one where, or the place that he basically commanded the French military during World War II. So it was pretty significant place, but I'm glad to have seen that. And yeah, obviously I told you I did that walking tour in Amsterdam that was heavily geared towards the life of Anne Frank, and you know her whole story, obviously, because we read her book or the Diary of Anne Frank when I was in 8th grade, and yeah, and since then I'm like, you know what, I really ought to give you know, Amsterdam a visit and kind of like, you know, do something and do like either a tour or maybe go inside the house. I didn't go inside the Anne Frank house. I've seen it from the outside twice, but I didn't go inside there. I just did but the walking tour, that was good enough for me. Definitely something that, yeah, I'm glad I did. Now, also in terms of the weather, yes, the rain did happen quite a bit. Well, not quite a bit. Maybe like 4 days tops. There was rain. Like maybe even 3 again. I wasn't counting necessarily, but it was mostly like sunny or cloudy. And also in Paris, they were still cleaning up after the Olympics. You still had the banners going around, and they were also doing construction or some kind of restoration work on the Notre Dame Cathedral. And so obviously no going in there. And last time I was there, the Arc de Triomphe was like under a tarp, and I was finally able to see it in person, so that was pretty cool. And Eiffel Tower, that never gets old. And then the Pantheon, I also saw that. And Luxembourg Gardens, can't go wrong there either. Second time going there. And then the Bastille, had to see that. French Revolution, come on. And I'm definitely gonna think, there's probably gonna be like, you know, stuff after I can say like, oh man, I should have mentioned that, I should have mentioned that. But no, it was pretty good. I mean, you know, when it comes to like being in restaurants, you know, oftentimes, yeah, you'll kind of be sitting there, be like, oh, the bill, the bill, the bill. But the thing you have to realize is in Europe and Western Europe, really, it's very common to kind of like have a more slower paced environment, right? Because in the U.S., it's like, you know, get you in, get you seated, get your food, get paid, bam, out of there. But it's much more slower paced in Europe. It's much more like, you know, people take their time, people watch, sip their, you know, espresso or whatever, cappuccino, and, you know, what have you. So definitely be prepared for that. You know, that's just how it is over there. So yeah, don't complain. Don't be a Karen about how it is over there. And yeah, I flew back on Austrian Airlines. I was hoping for a direct flight, but it would have been more expensive, obviously. And I had my choice of either, so the 3 choices I had, right, because Google Flights, they hit you with 3 of the cheapest choices. A layover in Montreal with Air Canada, United with Washington Dulles, and the third one was Austrian. So I'm like, yeah, let's do Austrian, try out their long haul product. Now, one thing I didn't like about Austrian, and I don't know, maybe this applies to other airlines, but I paid for my baggage, my checked luggage, beforehand. I know I did. But they were able to print my luggage tag the morning I flew out, but the guy told me like, oh, you gotta still pay for your baggage. I'm like, oh man. And so I had to pay like 68 euros, which is like, you know, definitely an outrage. But, you know, that was the only thing that went wrong. Everything else was fine. And I was so worried when I got to Vienna, because one thing about Vienna's airport is they're not too big on jet bridges. When you get there, oftentimes it's gonna be getting off the plane and onto the tarmac, getting the bus, and then you go to the terminal. Now, I was very worried because I've been to this airport before with my dad and I, and the way it worked was there were 2 stops on the bus, one to go to the baggage claim and then one for like connections. And I was so worried that like, oh man, is it gonna be like just 2 stops like it was last time? No, it was 1 stop because when we got to the stop, big old letters, it had like, you know, gates F, G, and I'm like, yes! And then I saw, oh yeah, everybody's transferring here, like myself. So yeah, that went pretty well. And obviously, I flew out of the G gates, if you ever been to Vienna's airport. And it was funny too, because the customs lady was actually on her phone when she was stamping out my passport. I thought that was pretty funny. Never seen that before. Sometimes they ask you a question or two when they see like when I was stamped out of Stockholm, the guy was like, oh, you went in through Copenhagen? I told him, yeah, I went here and here and here, and It's like that's all they need to hear. It's more when you come in there, that's when they ask you the questions. So, but very happy that they're still doing stamps because they are falling by the wayside. So anyway, yeah, layover in Vienna went very well, and yeah, I think the flight was 9.5 hours, maybe even close to 10. It was crazy. I think it was the longest flight I took thus far. Um, and the guy next to me, like he was cool and all, but like he had his arms like that, and these are economy seats, mind you. So I was like doing this for like a good chunk of the flight. I was very scrunched in, and but I survived. I lived, and one thing that I just didn't understand when the plane lands, you don't get up out of your seat. There were at least three people doing that, and I'm like, I said this too out loud. I'm like, but you can't hear very well because obviously the sound of the plane, even when it's taxiing. And I'm just like, you're not supposed to do that. That's a huge safety violation. You're not supposed to get up out of your seat when you're taxiing. Ooh. I mean, I felt the flight attendant's frustration because that is stupid. Don't ever do that. Don't ever get up when the plane gets there. Anyway, I think that's basically it. I gave you a good snapshot of just, my trip. Yeah, everything went well. It was very satisfactory. And yeah, so next year I'll be going to the UK and Ireland. We're going to try to shoot for those. So yeah, we will definitely be doing that next year. Obviously, there's a small chance it doesn't happen for unforeseen circumstances, but for now, it stands. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the vlogs, and I'll see you when I see you, whenever I upload next.